bride of ashes. Elora gripped the stiff bristles of the scrub brush until her knuckles turned white, pushing it across the cold flagstones in slow, punishing circles. Gray afternoon light bled through the high windows, outlining her hunched figure in a watery glow that did nothing to warm the drafty corridor. Every strike of the brush sent droplets of murky water spattering up her arms, dampening the thin sleeves of her worn dress. Her knees ached against the stone, but she kept her head down and her breathing quiet. The echo of her work masked the faint tremor in her chest, an unsteady rhythm she'd learned to hide as carefully as the bruises that dotted her ribs. Footsteps clicked behind her. Elora stiffened, knowing that brisk, unhurried cadence too well. She bowed her head lower, drawing her hair like a curtain over her face. "Look at the filth." Lady Marissa's voice sliced through the hush of the hallway, cultured tones gilded with disdain. "If a girl can't keep her own home clean, what use is she to any respectable man?" Elora didn't speak. She had learned silence was safer than any reply. Still, humiliation burned hot beneath her skin. The brush slipped briefly from her fingers. Before she could grab it, Marissa's shoe, polished leather embroidered with silver thread, came down on the wooden handle. Clumsy, Marissa pressed harder until the wood creaked. "Pick it up." Elora reached, risking a glance upward. Her stepmother's beauty was as precise as a painted icon. Pale gold hair coiled in perfect loops, ice blue eyes that never thawed, lips tinted rose, though the kindness such softness suggested had long since curdled. Marissa's gaze swept over Elora's work-worn hands and threadbare dress with open disgust. "Well, are you struck dumb along with being graceless?" "No, my lady," Elora murmured, reclaiming the brush. Water dripped from the bristles onto her skirt. "Speak up," Marissa said, as if addressing a servant, too stupid to follow simple commands. "One might think you're embarrassed." Elora forced her voice steady. "I'm not embarrassed to work, my lady." Marissa laughed softly. "Of course you aren't. How could you be? It's the only purpose you've ever served. Heaven knows no suitor would want a girl who skulks about like an orphaned alley cat." Elora's stomach clenched. Though she wasn't motherless, the title might as well have fit. The woman standing above her showed no hint of family affection, only possession. But the words that hurt most weren't Marissa's insults. They were the muffled scrape of another pair of boots, heavier, approaching from the far end of the corridor. Lord Aldrich. Elora's father used to carry her on his shoulders through the apple orchards beyond the manor walls. She remembered the sweet tang of fruit on her tongue, his booming laugh, the promise that no harm would ever touch her. That man vanished the day Marissa married him. Now he was a ghost in fine clothes, haunting rooms she scrubbed clean. Aldrich halted beside his wife. His once dark beard had thinned and new silver threaded the hair at his temples. But the change that pained Elora most gleamed in his eyes. They looked past her, not at her. She straightened, water dripping from her fingers. "My lord." She hadn't called him father in years. The word stuck like thorns behind her teeth. He acknowledged her with a curt nod, neither kind nor cruel, merely indifferent. "Is the floor finished?" "Not yet," Elora said softly. Aldrich's gaze flicked to Marissa for approval, as if seeking permission to form a thought, and then drifted back. "See it done before dusk," he said. "We expect guests tonight." Marissa's lips curved. "Important guests. Try to appear presentable, and for heaven's sake, keep silent unless you're spoken to." Elora dipped her head. "Yes, my lady." The couple moved on, their conversation fading into the clatter of servants preparing the manor for evening. Elora's shoulders sagged once they were gone. She huddled closer to the bucket, clutching the brush like a talisman. A dull ache pulsed behind her eyes, but she willed herself not to cry. She repeated an old promise, quietly, fiercely. "I will not break. Not for her, not for anyone." Somewhere beyond the courtyard walls a bell tolled, its sound carried on a sudden gust that sneaked through cracked shutters. The day was slipping toward twilight. Elora forced her limbs back to motion, letting the rhythm of scrubbing drown the restless thought that always stirred at dusk, the thought of running. She had chased the idea down countless corridors of imagination, only to slam into the locked gates of reality each time. There was no coin for passage, no friend to shelter her, no safe road between here and freedom. Still, the idea lingered like a half-remembered melody. Run, run, run. That same wind brought distant voices. Elora paused, listening. It wasn't the clipped instructions of servants, but a growing murmur, men and women talking all at once, agitated. She rose slowly, brushing her damp palms against her skirt. The bucket sloshed as she set it aside. Outside, the courtyard hedges rustled with uneasy gathering. Boots scraped on gravel. A carriage bearing the royal crest stood near the gate, its polished doors still shut. Guards in crimson cloaks fanned out, clearing a path toward the central square beyond the manor grounds. Elora's pulse quickened. Royal envoys never visited isolated estates like this without reason. Her first instinct was to stay hidden. Marissa would punish her for eavesdropping. Yet some instinct stronger than fear tugged her forward. She skirted the hall's shadows, slipped through an open archway, and drifted into the bustle at the edge of the crowd. Villagers had come too, farmers still smelling of hay, craftspeople with dust on their sleeves, children clinging to mothers' skirts. Their faces wore the same wary hope. Perhaps the envoys brought news of lower taxes, or a fresh grain allowance before winter. Conversation stuttered into silence when the carriage door swung open. A herald stepped out, resplendent in violet and gold. Sunlight caught the silver trumpets emblazoned on his breastplate. He unfurled a parchment as long as his arm and cleared his throat. Inhabitants of the northern province, he began, voice projecting across the square. By decree of his imperium, and in accordance with the covenant of flames, the time of offering has come again. A hush fell, sharp, expectant. Elora's heart plummeted. Covenant of flames. Everyone knew the words, spoken once every decade, the ritual that had kept ash storms and dragon fire from their fields for nearly a century. The herald scanned the crowd. 10 years have passed since the last sacrifice. The eldest unmarried maiden of pure virtue shall be delivered to the dragon lord Rhaegar at sundown, 3 days hence. In exchange, the realm shall enjoy another decade of peace. A frail cry broke the silence. Mothers drew daughters behind them. Men exchanged helpless glances. The decree was ancient, unbreakable. There would be no protest, yet the air vibrated with dread. The herald lifted the scroll higher. Step forward and declare the name of the maiden who rightfully fulfills this decree. No one moved. The square felt suspended in time until the crowd split like fabric torn by a blade. Marissa strode through, head held high, pearl earrings winking against her graceful neck. She walked as if the earth itself belonged beneath her feet. Aldrich hurried a step behind her, eyes fixed on the ground. "Your Grace," Marissa said, stopping before the herald. "I come as a loyal servant to the throne to present my stepdaughter, Elora. She is 22, virtuous, and untouched, as any servant in our house can attest." A ripple of whispers swept the crowd. Elora froze, every breath turning cold inside her chest. The herald arched an eyebrow politely. "Is this maiden present among us?" Marissa turned, her gaze zeroing in on Elora with predatory precision. "Come, child," she called, voice loud enough for all to hear. "Do not be afraid. Your sacrifice will protect us all." Elora found her feet rooted. Villagers stepped aside, forming a corridor she could not refuse. She turned to run, then saw her father's face. Aldrich's expression was blank, but his eyes flicked once to Marissa and back. Silent approval. Something inside Elora cracked. She forced herself forward, each step echoing like thunder between her ears. When she reached the stone platform, the herald studied her closely. His gaze lingered on the calluses lining her palms, on the faint bruise under one eye. Perhaps he guessed the truth of her upbringing. Perhaps he simply didn't care. "Do you, Elora of House Delcare, accept the honor of safeguarding your people?" he asked. A dozen responses caught in her throat: anger, refusal, hysterical laughter. She swallowed them all. Marissa's slender fingers rested on her shoulder, deceptively gentle, nails biting warning crescents into her skin. Elora spoke through numb lips. I hear the decree." The herald nodded. Two guards stepped forward, bearing chains of braided silver. They fastened the cuffs around Elora's wrists with ceremonial gravity, even as her pulse hammered so loudly she wondered if they felt it through the metal. The weight of the chains dragged her arms slightly apart, humbling posture forced upon her no matter how tall she tried to stand. Marissa leaned in. "Hold your head high, the least you can do is die with grace." Elora faced her. "I'm not dying today." The stepmother's smile faltered, but before she could reply, Aldrich placed a hand on Marissa's sleeve and murmured something Elora couldn't hear. His gaze skittered across his daughter's face like a stone skipping water, never settling before he turned away. Two more guards took position at Elora's sides. The herald rolled up his parchment with a snap. "Prepare the offering," he declared. "She departs at dawn tomorrow." Elora scarcely felt her feet as they marched her toward the manor gates. The crowd parted, some people reaching out, perhaps to offer comfort, perhaps to touch the living legend she'd already become, but the guards barked them back. Children stared with round, solemn eyes. In the hush, she caught whispers. "She always seemed kind. I heard the dragon's claws are black as iron. 10 years of peace, and it's a blessing." Her breath clouded in the cooling air. Above, clouds gathered like bruises across the sky. A single thought beat through the numbness. This cannot be happening. The gates clanged behind her. The guards ushered her to a narrow carriage reserved for prisoners. One opened the door, gestured at the wooden bench inside. Elora hesitated, feeling every pair of eyes on her. She drew a breath that tasted of iron and smoke. When she spoke, her voice was low but clear enough for Marissa to hear across the courtyard. "I will not break." Marissa's smile returned, thin and vicious. "We'll see." The carriage door shut, sealing Elora inside. Iron bolts slid home with finality. She pressed her cheek to the barred window and watched the courtyard shrink as the carriage rolled toward the main road. Marissa's silhouette remained at the gates, pale hair shining like a distant flame until distance and dust swallowed it. Alone in the dim confines, Elora curled her bound wrists against her chest. A storm raged behind her eyes, grief swirling with a savage rising heat she barely recognized as her own anger. Chains rattled as the wheels jostled over uneven ground. Somewhere ahead waited a mountain where the sky bled ash and a dragon lord who destroyed kingdoms. Somewhere behind lay the life she'd known, empty rooms, cold eyes, and floors she could never scrub clean enough. Elora pressed her forehead to the bars and whispered into the gathering dusk. "I will not break, I will burn before I break." The carriage rumbled on, its wheels marking the road to the end, or the beginning, of everything she had ever been. The cell smelled of damp straw and rusted chains, but Elora barely noticed. Hours ticked by in aching stillness, long enough for the sky beyond the narrow window to turn black, then bruise purple with the first hint of dawn. Each distant flutter of wings or scrape of a rat set her nerves jangling. She tested the silver manacles looped through a ring in the wall, hoping they'd loosen overnight. But her wrists remained trapped in a short span of chain that forced her to sit upright against the stone. Cold crept through her ceremonial robe. Refusing to shiver, she focused on steady breaths that did little to calm her racing pulse. A soft squeak of hinges drew her gaze to the iron door. Light spilled in, throwing a long shadow over the straw. A servant, one she recognized vaguely, a girl called Morel, slipped inside carrying a brass basin and a folded length of white silk. Her plain face tightened with uncertainty when she saw Elora awake. "I have to wash you," Morel whispered, eyes darting down the corridor. Lady Marissa ordered it. Elora nodded, pushing tangled hair behind her ears. Thank you. Morel knelt, soaking a cloth in the warm water. I'm sorry, she murmured as she dabbed gently at Elora's abraded wrists. This shouldn't be happening. Elora swallowed. You didn't chain me. I still feel guilty. She hesitated, pressing the cloth to a bruise on Elora's forearm. Why didn't your father stop it? Elora closed her eyes. Because he believes the sacrifice is necessary. Or maybe he just believes her. She didn't have the strength to untangle that knot again. Morel finished cleaning away dirt and dried blood, then unfolded the silk robe, a shimmering garment embroidered with tiny flames and silver thread. I'm supposed to dress you in this. Elora stared at the robe's luminous fabric. It looks expensive. It belonged to Lord Aldrich's first wife, Morel said softly. He kept it hidden until last night, when Lady Marissa demanded something worthier of the dragon's bride. A sharp pang wedged beneath Elora's ribs. She remembered flashes of her mother's laughter, memories Marissa insisted she forget. She reached for the robe but could only lift her arms a fraction. Morel drew closer, undoing the shackles long enough to slide the garment over Elora's head and tie a braided sash around her waist. The silk felt like cool water against her skin. The servant's gaze flicked over Elora's face. You're shaking. Am I? Elora steadied her hands. I can't decide if it's fear or rage. Both, probably. Morel clipped a thin chain back around Elora's wrists, leaving enough slack for her to walk. They told me to braid your hair. She paused, then spoke in an urgent undertone. The driver said the road to the mountain is narrow. If the carriage slows jump runs south into the ravine, no one follows that path. Elora's breath caught. Why are you telling me this? Because you were always kind to the maids, even when Lady Marissa mocked you for it. Morel began weaving Elora's auburn hair into a thick plait. And because I hate her. If you escape, maybe that will hurt her. Elora's throat tightened. They'll punish you. I'll deny everything. Morel tucked a last strand into place, then pressed something small and metallic into Elora's palm, a bent hairpin sharpened at the tip. Hide it. Footsteps clanged beyond the door. Morel snatched up the basin and backed toward the exit. Good luck, she whispered, then hurried out as two guards entered, armored in dark steel etched with the royal crest. Elora of House Dalcaire, the taller guard intoned, unlocking her manacles from the wall. He snapped a new chain between her wrists, shorter than before. It's time. They marched her through the manor's east wing, halls she'd polished until they gleamed now, flashing past like scenes from another life. At the foot of the grand staircase, Lord Aldrich waited. He wore a fur-lined cloak against the morning chill, eyes shadowed by sleeplessness. Marissa stood beside him, draped in crimson velvet, the picture of morning dignity, if one ignored the satisfied tilt of her lips. Elora expected commands, perhaps one final cutting remark. Instead, Aldrich cleared his throat. I came to offer guidance, he said, voice rough. Remember your duty, child. The safety of thousands rests on your shoulders now. Elora searched his face for even a flicker of fatherly anguish. All she saw was weary resignation. I was your daughter before I was their shield, she said quietly. Aldrich's mouth tightened, but he said nothing. Marissa stepped forward, adjusting the lay of Elora's braid with mock tenderness. Such noble resolve, she murmured for her ears alone. I wonder how long it will last inside a dragon's maw. Elora met her gaze. Longer than your veneer of kindness. She leaned closer. When I'm gone, who will you torment? Marissa's hand tightened on the braid, giving it a vicious yank. I'm sure I'll find a way to fill my days, she said sweetly, before gesturing to the guards. Escort her. They led Elora through the courtyard where dawn mist curled around frost-tipped hedges. A carriage waited, larger than the prison wagon, yet barred and rimmed with iron. Two black horses pawed the gravel, breath steaming. The driver nodded curtly as Elora climbed inside. The door slammed. Bolts slid home. Elora sank onto the padded bench. With her hands bound, she fingered the sharpened hairpin hidden inside her sleeve. Morel's hope burned like a small candle. As the wheels lurched forward, she peered through the slats. Marissa waved to the guards, a graceful silhouette against the pale morning sky. Aldrich's shoulders slumped as though all the air inside him had leaked away. Neither spared Elora a last glance. The manor vanished behind a rise in the road. Fields rolled past, naked stubble glowing gold under the climbing sun. Villagers knelt beside the road, making the sign of blessing or cowering behind cartwheels. Elora's gaze snagged on each face. Fear, pity, relief that fate hadn't chosen them. She wondered whether any of them would remember her name 10 years from now, when the herald returned to claim another life. Mid-morning, the convoy left the farmlands for a narrow pass between sheer cliffs. The path cut west toward the Ashen Range, where the earth changed color, green fading to gray-black rock, trees giving way to scorched scrub that crackled beneath the horses' hooves. Volcanic smoke smudged the horizon like thunderheads that never rained. The smell of sulfur thickened in Elora's lungs. Hours later, the lead guard called a halt near a stone bridge arching over a ravine. The horses stamped anxiously, sensing the unstable ground. Elora's pulse quickened. Morel's directions echoed. Jump when the carriage slows. She tested the cuff chain, pressing the pin against a twisted link. The metal scraped, spitting tiny sparks, but the iron held. Her heart hammered as the carriage lurched forward again, slowly now, wheels bumping across missing planks in the bridge. Voices rose outside. Hold steady. Easy. Almost there. Elora slid the pin into the cuff's keyhole. Click. The left shackle fell loose around her wrist. She worked the right, breath ragged. Another click, then a sudden shout from outside. Ho, something spooked the rear horse. The carriage jerked sideways. Elora tumbled off the bench, wrists free, rolling toward the opposite door. She righted herself, nerves blazing. This is it. She flung her weight at the door. It gave an inch, then slammed shut against the chain latch. She scrambled for the window, pushing her shoulders through the narrow gap, one leg braced to propel herself. A gauntleted hand seized her braid and yanked backward. The tall guard's face appeared in the window, eyes like flint. Stay inside unless you fancy the ravine. Elora twisted, managing to slip the braid free but losing her hairpin in the scuffle. The guard wrenched the door open, stepped in, and shoved her onto the floor. Chains clattered as he refastened her wrists. His grip bruised. Try that again, he said, tightening the cuffs, and I'll bind your ankles too. Elora glared up. You think the dragon will thank you for delivering me in one piece? Orders are orders, he muttered, hauling her upright. For what it's worth, I hope he eats the lot of them, starting with the witch who volunteered you. Now sit. Surprise flickered through Elora's fury. She obeyed, folding her hands, newly manacled, in her lap. The guard backed out, latching the door. The convoy creaked forward. The bridge groaned behind them, swallowed by scorched hills. By late afternoon, the mountains towered on all sides. Ash sifted from an occluded sky, dusting the carriage roof. Heat seeped through the wood. Sweat dampened Elora's collar. When at last the wheels crunched onto solid basalt and slowed to a stop, she braced herself. A lock turned. The door swung wide. The guard's formation changed, less wary of her escape, more of what lay ahead. A cliff road climbed to a fortress carved from the flank of a smoking peak. Its jagged spires rose like the ribs of a giant beast, red light pulsing between seams of obsidian stone. Rivers of cooled lava formed glossy terraces that glimmered under drifting ash. One guard unhooked her chains from the carriage floor, motioning forward. Elora stepped down, silk robe whispering against the rock. Heat shimmered off the black ground. Her slippers offered little protection. Each breath felt like inhaling a furnace draft. The march toward the fortress blurred until doorways swallowed her view of the sky. Inside, the air glowed dim russet from veins of molten magma threading the walls. Carved reliefs of ancient dragons lined the corridor, jaws agape, claws extended, wings wrapping doorways like molten guardians. Elora's escort said nothing, footsteps echoing over a bridge of iron plates that spanned a chasm of roiling lava far below. Every so often, a distant bellow reverberated through the stone, and her stomach tightened. At last, massive wooden doors banded in black steel loomed ahead. A smaller iron door stood inset within one of them. The lead guard produced a key the length of his forearm, slid it into the lock. With a groan, the iron door swung inward to reveal a chamber soaked in orange light. Tapestries depicting dragons in mid-flight, a canopy bed draped in crimson silk, a high-backed chair carved like entwined serpents. 2 braziers flanked the wide window where volcanic smoke curled upward toward a dim sky. The guard gestured. Inside. Elora stepped across the threshold. The door clanged shut. Bolts slid. She was alone. She pressed her palm to her racing heart, turning in a slow circle to study the room. Despite the heat, a draft brushed her neck. A vent carved high in the corner, breathing in rhythm with the mountain. A low table bore a silver decanter and 2 goblets. She moved closer, fingers trembling, and poured water that smelled faintly of minerals. She drank, splashing coolness over her lips. The chains felt heavier now. She scanned for anything sharp, but found only cushions and embroidered rugs. She approached the massive wooden wardrobe, tugged at its handle. It was locked. Restless, she circled the bed, trailing fingers along the silk duvet. Something glinted on the nightstand. A polished obsidian comb and a single white orchid, its petals untouched by ash. She lifted the flower. It smelled faintly of citrus. Impossibly fresh here. Below the orchid lay a scrap of parchment. She unfolded it. Eat. Rest. Someone will come for you when the sun dips behind the western ridge. The handwriting was fluid, confident, no signature. Elora traced the ink with her thumb. A prickling awareness crawled up her spine. An invisible gaze, ancient and heavy, settling on her. She turned, searching the chamber's corners, but saw only flickering shadows. She poured another drink and paused. The silence fractured. From somewhere beyond the thick walls came a rhythmic thud, like colossal wings beating. Stone groaned. Cinders drifted from the ceiling. Instinct screamed, something is coming. Elora set the goblet down with shaking fingers. She paced, blood roaring in her ears. She tugged at the silver chain, testing each link. The metal held. The thud returned, closer now, shaking dust from wall carvings. A shadow rippled across the window, blocking the molten glow. Then a roar, low, guttural, rolled through the castle, vibrating the very air inside Elora's lungs. She flinched as a torch guttered, nearly snuffed by the tremor. Heat spiked. A gust of smoke-tinged wind blasted through the vent, fluttering tapestries, sending her braid whipping against her shoulders. The iron door latch scraped. Elora spun, chains clinking, the handle twisted. She braced herself, breath sharp as glass. The door swung wide on a hush of ash-laden air. No guard stepped through. Only silence. Dense. Expectant. Then a figure emerged from the darkness, tall as the doorframe. Shoulders broad, hair black as volcanic glass. Firelight danced across bare skin etched with shadows of overlapping scales. Eyes golden as the core of a furnace locked onto hers. Elora's heart seized. Rhaegar. He crossed the threshold without a sound, smoke curling around his boots. Behind him, the hallway flickered with crimson light, hinting at vast wings retreating into mist before vanishing. He studied her, gaze sweeping from the manacles on her wrists to the orchid still clutched between her fingers. "You wear my mother's silk," he said, voice molten and strangely calm. "An unexpected kindness from your captors." Elora's voice came out cracked. "Kindness isn't their talent." His eyes lingered on the faint bruises circling her wrists. No, I suppose not. He stepped closer. The heat of him was tangible, a living hearth. She wanted to step back but held her ground. I am Elora, she said, chin lifting. I know who you are. He glanced at the silver cuffs. Do those chains comfort you? They remind me what I'm up against. Something flickered in his gaze. Amusement? Regret? He reached out, fingers brushing the chain. In a movement too fast to track, he snapped the cuff from her left wrist. Metal shrieked. He repeated the motion on the right, tossing the broken links to the floor. Fear is reasonable, he said, stepping back, and slavery is not. Elora rubbed her wrists, torn between gratitude and fresh unease. Everything about him defied expectation, the measured calm in his voice, the subtle courtesy. Yet power radiated from him, raw and volatile. She sensed it coiled beneath his skin like a serpent waiting to strike. What do you want from me? She asked. His gaze traveled over her slowly, not in lust but in assessment, as though examining puzzle pieces scattered on a table. Perhaps I'll know when you stop trembling. Her cheeks flushed hot. I'm not trembling. His lips quirked. Of course. He moved to the window, staring out at rivers of lava blinking like guttering stars. She noticed the faint hitch in his breath, as if each inhale was a choice. When he turned back, the glow behind him silhouetted a partial span of scales at his shoulders, shimmering before sinking beneath human skin again. I won't kill you, Elora, he said, but your life is bound to mine now. If you understand the prophecy, you know why. I know only that a woman must die for 10 years of peace. Death is cheaper than truth, he murmured, eyes clouding. So kings prefer it. He lifted a hand as if to touch her cheek, then dropped it. Rest, eat. Tomorrow will test us both. He pivoted toward the door. Wait, she blurted. He paused. She swallowed. If you are not the monster they say, why keep this tradition? Why accept unwilling brides? He looked over his shoulder, firelight carving planes of grief into his face. Because even monsters grow weary of war. The door clicked shut behind him. Elora stared at the iron panels, heart pounding like a drum of war inside her ribs. Chains lay broken at her feet, yet she couldn't decide if she was freer now, or caught in a larger snare. Her pulse counted the seconds, each one echoing with questions no one had answered. Outside, a fresh tremor rippled through the mountain, rattling the goblets. Far below, magma hissed. Elora exhaled shakily and whispered to the empty chamber. Tomorrow, then. Night seeped into the stone corridors, one slow breath at a time, carrying a hush that pressed against the walls of Elora's chamber. She paced the rug with silent steps, every sense attuned to the mountain's pulse. Far below, molten rock churned in unseen veins, a distant heartbeat echoing her own. Occasionally, a tremor shivered through the floor, rattling the goblets on the table and sending sparks skittering from the braziers. She had eaten a little of the bread and smoked cheese left on a tray, but hunger lingered, threaded with nerves. Time blurred. Without chains, her hands moved restlessly, fingering embroidery on the robe, tugging at loose strands in her braid, tracing the carved serpents on a bedpost. Sleep tempted her, yet fear of dreaming kept her upright. She tried to imagine escape again, but here, in the Dragon's Mountain, every wall felt as thick as destiny itself. A knock rapped softly and the iron door opened. 2 women entered, neither the maids from her father's house nor servants of any court she recognized. They wore dark gowns, cinched in gold cords, hair coiled and pinned with obsidian. Neither spoke, but one approached with a low wooden stool while the other set a lacquer box on the table. Elora stood still as they loosened her braid and combed out her hair with the obsidian comb. They worked quickly and gently, weaving her hair into a crown of loops and ribbons that framed her face. The sensation was oddly soothing despite the circumstances. When they finished, the first woman opened the box to reveal a coil of delicate gold chain. Tiny rubies winked along its length like droplets of blood. She held it up, questioning. Elora nodded once. The woman draped the jewelry around her neck, the cool metal settling in the hollow of her throat. A matching pair of bracelets encircled her wrists. Though lighter than the shackles, they felt no less symbolic. The women stepped back, bowed and glided out, leaving a faint scent of sandalwood. As soon as the door shut, Elora crossed to the nightstand and examined the orchid again. A few petals had started to curl at the edges. She stroked them absently, wondering if the flower had grown on this scorched mountain or been brought from some lush valley beyond. Either way, its life here felt as precarious as her own. The latch scraped once more. A captain of the guard entered, flanked by 2 soldiers. He inclined his head, polite but distant. "The Lord requests your presence." She steeled her spine, following them into the corridor. Shadows undulated over the walls where lava flowed behind crystal panes. The heat rose in waves, carrying an undercurrent of ash that clung to the back of her throat. At each turn, iron gates waited, opening with a grating groan and slamming shut behind her. The path felt deliberately winding, no straight line she might retrace alone. They reached a pair of burnished bronze doors etched with intertwining dragons, tails knotted together at the center. The captain pushed one door inward and gestured. "Enter." Elora stepped into a vast circular hall. A domed ceiling soared overhead, ribbed with dark stone. Brazier fire bathed everything in shifting amber. At the chamber's heart, a raised dais held an altar carved from obsidian, etched with runes that glimmered red. Upon the altar rested a ceremonial dagger, slender, double-edged, its pommel set with a single ruby. The blade seemed to drink the light rather than reflect it. A scatter of petals dusted the floor, white against black. High-set windows revealed a slice of indigo sky streaked with volcanic smoke. The guards remained outside. The door thunked shut. Alone again, Elora inched closer to the altar. Instinct warned her back, yet the dagger's pull felt magnetic. She reached out, fingertips brushing the hilt. The metal thrummed beneath her skin. Alive. Shadows flared, then subsided. She lifted the blade, surprised by its lightness despite the wide fuller down its center. Tiny characters glowed along the edge, too archaic to read. But she understood the promise they whispered. Blood answers blood. Boots scuffed behind her. She spun, hiding the dagger in the folds of her robe. Rhaegar emerged from a side passage dressed in black trousers and an open doublet that bared half his chest, bronzed skin patterned with faint scales. No armor, no crown. Still, presence alone made him formidable. He paused at the bottom of the dais steps, eyes sliding from Elora's face to the altar behind her. "You were meant to meditate here," he said, voice low, "not steal from it." She forced calm into her stance. Shouldn't a bride choose her own token for the ceremony? One dark brow arched. Perhaps, but generally not a weapon. Rhaegar climbed a step. Elora retreated, blade hidden at her side. Mist rose from the heated floor in curls, edging him in wavering light. His gaze flicked to her clenched fist beneath the robe. He wasn't fooled, only watching, assessing each breath she drew. "I thought the day would grant me more time," he said quietly. "Kings prefer fanfare and speeches. They promised a formal escort at dawn. Yet here you stand, already before me. My stepmother never enjoyed prolonging things." Bitterness tightened Elora's throat. "She likes her victories quick." He eyed her for a lingering moment, then inclined his head, acknowledging understanding, or perhaps sorrow. "You still tremble." She lifted her chin, perhaps from disgust that this tradition persists. His mouth curved, sad, not mocking. "I despise it too. It began as penance, then became routine. Mortals found comfort in rituals, even cruel ones, and I—" He exhaled, jaw flexing. "I lost the strength to refuse." Elora tightened her grip on the dagger. "You could end it. Spare every maiden who comes after me. And condemn thousands to fire," he murmured. Do you think those kings would not wage war the instant fear vanished? Maybe fear shouldn't rule either of us. Something bright flickered behind his eyes like a spark coaxed by wind. He stepped closer. Elora's pulse stuttered. She weighed distances, angles. If she struck true, would his heart be where a man's heart should be? She remembered the maid's whispers of black iron claws, the villagers' gossip, Marissa's glee. They called him monster, but monsters didn't break chains from a captive's wrists. Rhaegar reached the dais' top step. Heat emanated from him, warming her cheeks. "Your name means torch," he said softly. "Did you know?" "No." "Appropriate." He lifted one hand slowly, giving her time to retreat. Fingertips brushed a stray hair from her shoulder. "You burn with anger, with life." Elora swallowed hard. The dagger trembled, slicking her palm with nervous sweat. Now, her mind hissed. End this, run. She saw her stepmother's triumphant smile, heard Aldrich's hollow blessing. Remember your duty. For a moment the weapon felt righteous. Rhaegar's touch fell away. "I will not force vows on you tonight," he said. "Rest until dawn, then we speak truly. Of curses, of prophecy, of choices still yours to make." He turned, exposing his unguarded spine. The gesture was either trust or fatal arrogance. Elora lunged. The dagger flashed like a captured star, arcing toward the ridgeline of his shoulder blade. But Rhaegar spun with impossible speed, hand snapping up to trap her wrist. The blade halted a hair from his throat. Gold flared in his eyes, brighter than forge fire. Her heart crashed against her ribs. She strained to push forward, but his grip was iron. Scales flowed across his arms, shimmering black-green. Under her fingers, his skin hardened, unbreakable. His voice was a low thunder. "So easily they taught you to kill." "They taught me to survive," she spat. He wrenched the dagger from her grasp and tossed it. The weapon clanged across the floor, skittering out of reach. With a swift movement, he twisted her arm behind her back and pressed her chest first against a carved pillar. Heat bled through the silk where his body caged hers. She felt the strength in him, something primeval, vast as a storm, and yet the pressure never crossed into pain. "Elora," he said near her ear, breath scorching. "Listen." She struggled once, futile. "Let me go." "Not until you understand." His free hand braced the pillar beside her head, claws half formed at his fingertips. "If I die by your hand, the curse binds to you next. My fire becomes yours. It will burn from the inside out." She stiffened. "You lie." "I wish I did." His voice cracked like splitting stone. "You are brave, but not ready for such flames." "Then break the curse another way. That is why you are here." He drew back slightly, loosening his grip. "Because your life and mine intertwine." Silence throbbed around them, filled by the mountain's slow rumble. Elora turned her head enough to glimpse him. Gold flecks swirled in his eyes, illuminating pain so deep she almost dropped her guard. She whispered, "I never asked for your fate." "I never asked for betrayal," he answered. "Yet both found us." Suddenly aware of their closeness, she pushed against him. He released her and stepped back. Scales receded, leaving only bronzed skin, though his eyes still glowed. She faced him fully. "So what now? Keep me locked away until 10 years pass and they deliver another girl?" "No." His sigh carried centuries. "This ends one way or another before midwinter. By then the prophecy demands a choice." He retrieved the dagger, sliding it onto the altar with a metallic sigh. "Until that night, you remain under my protection, and I under yours." Elora's laughter escaped, sharp-edged. "Protection? You're the dragon." "Dragons can bleed." He wiped his palm across the runes, smearing a faint sheen of his own blood from where the blade nicked him. "And they can mourn." Torches guttered, casting the hall into deeper shadow. Wind howled through a vent high above, scattering petals. The orchid in Elora's hair slipped loose, falling between them. It hit the stone silently, petals already browning at the edges. Rhaegar lifted it, turning the wilted bloom in his fingers. Beauty fades quickly here. Is that a threat? A truth. He placed the flower on the altar beside the dagger. But some things rise again from ash. Thunder rumbled beneath their feet, a warning from the mountain's core. Flames surged higher in the braziers, sending heat waves rippling across the chamber. Rhaegar's eyes brightened, ignited by the reflected glow. He stepped closer, voice dropping to a hoarse whisper only she could hear. You think killing me will save you, foolish girl, you're already mine. Your fate and mine are one. Kill me, and you end yourself. He leaned in, breath hot on her cheek, scales flickering beneath his skin like living armor. Welcome to your curse, Elora. You'll learn to live with it, or burn trying. The mountain roared and every torch flared white-hot, plunging the room into a blinding storm of sparks just as his words struck home. Elora's gasp caught when the floor trembled, sending the dagger clattering against stone again. Heat rushed between them, raw, consuming, as if the prophecy itself had awakened, hungry for their next move. And in that heartbeat of glaring fire, when she could see nothing but his blazing eyes and feel nothing but the staggering force of their bond, Elora realized the truth he had spoken. She was bound to him, whether by blood, by curse, or by the impossible fire gathering in her chest. The flames dimmed as quickly as they rose, leaving crackling embers and thick swirling smoke. Rhaegar's silhouette loomed, unbroken, impossibly steady. Elora, he murmured, voice rumbling like distant thunder. Choose wisely what you set ablaze. The smoke curled between them, swallowing the last of the light, and the chapter's final echoes hung in the dark hall, promising either salvation or ruin, forged in fire and bound by ashes. Morning crept in like a kept secret, sliding pale light along the edge of the heavy drapes until it brushed Elora's cheek. She woke in stages, every breath carrying memories from the night before. Scales glinting beneath Rhaegar's skin, the press of his voice at her ear, the jarring knowledge that her attempt to kill him had failed in ways beyond simple defeat. For one suspended instant she lay perfectly still, trying to decide whether she was relieved or ashamed that she was alive at all. Then the unfamiliar hush of the chamber insisted on her attention, nudging her upright. Silk sheets pooled around her waist, too fine for comfort, almost mocking in their softness. She ran her fingertips over the patterns stitched across the duvet, dragons twisting among stylized flames, then drew her knees to her chest. The robe she'd worn yesterday lay draped over a low stool, the ruby chain still resting in its folds. Rhaegar had removed her shackles, yet she felt the weight of invisible links tugging at her mind. Inhaling a steadying breath, she swung her legs over the side of the bed, toes curling against the warm rug. Somewhere deep within the mountain, magma flowed in unseen rivers, keeping every surface comfortably heated. It shouldn't have felt pleasant. It did. She crossed to the high windows and pulled the curtains apart. Beyond the thick glass, the world looked foreign, volcanic ridges etched in charcoal lines against a sky bruised violet. Ash drifted like lazy snow, catching sunlight in silver sparks before sinking out of sight. Elora pressed her palm to the pane, half expecting the glass to burn her. Instead, it offered a mild warmth, as if everything in this fortress had gathered the mountain's heartfire into itself. You can't cage smoke, she whispered to her reflection, but the glass only showed a girl caught between exhaustion and steely resolve, hair escaping its braids, eyes ringed by sleepless shadows. She dressed quickly in a fresh gown folded on a cedar chest, soft linen the color of moonlight. When she tugged the laces tight, she discovered no fastenings at the back that required another's help, a curiously thoughtful choice. Still uneasy, she plaited her hair into a single loose braid and tucked stray wisps behind her ears, then scanned the room one more time. No chains, no guards. only an ornate door with an iron handle. Cautiously, she tried it. The latch gave. Her pulse leaped. She eased the door open onto a quiet corridor lit by wall sconces of iron shaped into talons. The stone floor gleamed obsidian, and vents near the ceiling vented curls of warm air that smelled faintly of mineral salt. She slipped out, surprised the hall was empty, and padded toward the first junction. Each step echoed softly, as though the mountain cushioned sound beneath layers of heated breath. Choosing a direction at random, she followed a passage arching past giant bas-reliefs, dragons coiled around human figures in eternal dance, scales picked out in obsidian shards that caught the torchlight. A shiver traced her spine, not of fear but of uncanny awe. The fortress was equal parts art and imprisonment, its silent grandeur neither welcoming nor overtly hostile, simply watching. The corridor opened into a balcony overlooking an interior chasm, where lava rolled sluggishly far below. A stone bridge spanned the gap, its side rails sculpted into interlocking dragons. The heat rising from the depths kissed her face and left a metallic taste on her tongue. She contemplated the bridge, noted the single guard posted at the far end, armor reflecting orange glow, and turned away before he saw her. Backtracking, she nearly collided with a young servant carrying a silver tray stacked with folded linens. The girl gasped, nearly dropping her burden. Elora steadied the pile with quick hands. "I'm sorry," she said. "I didn't mean to startle you." The servant's eyes darted everywhere except Elora's face. I beg pardon, my lady. You're not meant to roam without escort." "My lady?" The title startled her after years of Marissa's barbed derision. "I'm no lady here, just Elora. Do you know where I might find something to eat? And perhaps directions back to—" She realized she didn't know what to call her own quarters. "The room I came from." The girl swallowed. "The kitchens lie 2 levels down the north spiral, but you shouldn't go alone. The master wouldn't be pleased." "The master?" Elora repeated. "Do you all fear him?" Color drained from the girl's cheeks. "He keeps us safe. That is enough." She gathered her linens as if drawing armor around herself. "If you're hungry, I can send a platter." Elora softened her voice. "Thank you. I'd prefer plain bread, maybe fruit if there is any, and water." She hesitated. "What's your name?" The servant's eyes widened. "We're not supposed to—" "I won't tell anyone." Elora offered a faint smile. "I won't be here forever. A name is a small comfort." The girl glanced over her shoulder, then whispered, "My name is Corin." "Corin." Elora felt the word settle into her memory like a fragile seed. "It's good to meet you." Corin gave a nervous nod, whispered something about returning soon, and hurried away, footsteps tapping down the hall until they vanished into the fortress's hum. Elora exhaled. Even here, kindness came wrapped in fear. She wandered a little longer, memorizing turns, noting statues, counting doors. Every corridor seemed designed to curve back on itself, making orientation slippery. When she found another balcony, she searched for landmarks in the view beyond the window. Twin peaks knifing the horizon, a plume of sulfuric steam, only to realize those markers shifted as she changed levels, as if the entire fortress was built in spirals that ascended and descended in irregular patterns. Escape without guidance would be nearly impossible. Footsteps approached behind her, measured, booted, heavy. She turned just as a man emerged from a side corridor, a steward perhaps, tall and broad-shouldered, wearing dark livery. His eyes flicked to her side, where a guard might stand, then back to her. "Lady Elora," he said, bowing, "forgive the intrusion. Lord Rhaegar requests your presence in the East Library when you are ready." "He requests?" The word surprised her. "Not commands?" "He rarely commands guests." The steward's tone suggested the nuance was important. "May I escort you?" She weighed the offer and nodded. "I'd appreciate it. These halls feel like a maze." "They are." he said simply, then turned, expecting her to follow. They walked in silence for several minutes, passing archways that opened to furnace rooms glowing red and quieter alcoves lined with fountains of clear water trickling into stone basins. At last, they reached a tall door etched with copper dragons chasing each other across its surface. The steward pressed a hand to the latch. It swung open smoothly. Rows of shelves stretched beneath a vaulted ceiling painted in hues of soot and flame. Books bound in leather the color of old ember stood shoulder to shoulder with scrolls sealed by drips of wax. A hearth dominated one wall, flames dancing behind a grate shaped like intertwined wings. And at a long table of polished basalt, Rhaegar sat, one hand braced on a tome so ancient it seemed ready to crumble, the other resting against his temple. He looked up. Elora's breath stalled. In the full light of morning he seemed less myth, more painfully real. Tired lines etched the corners of his mouth, as if the night's turmoil had left marks beneath his skin. Still, his gaze held the same molten depth she remembered. She released the steward with a nod. He closed the doors, leaving them alone. Rhaegar rose. "Thank you for coming." "I wasn't sure refusing was an option." It was. He tilted his head slightly, strands of dark hair brushing his brow. "Though this place can be persuasive." "Persuasive," she echoed with a dry laugh. "One word for it." Her eyes drifted to the open book. Rhaegar followed her gaze. "Dragon curses and blood-bound prophecies, not cheerful reading." "Does any of it help?" She approached, fingertips brushing the rough parchment edge. "Or is it just a reminder?" "A bit of both." He motioned to a second chair upholstered in charcoal velvet. "Sit." She sat, smoothing her skirt, then looked him straight on. "Last night you said the curse would pass to me if I killed you." He folded his arms, expression shuddered. "Yes." "How? Why me?" "Because I'm the sacrifice? The prophecy's chosen maiden?" His jaw tightened. "The prophecy doesn't call you maiden, it calls you torchbearer." She frowned. "You said my name means torch." "It does." He leaned forward, resting forearms on the table. "The prophecy is older than the kingdom, older than my birth, though I've lived longer than any mortal kingdom standing now. It says the bound flame will pass to the hand that ends the dragon's suffering. Whether in mercy or violence, the wording is flexible." "Bound flame," she repeated softly. "You." He inclined his head. "Yes." "So if I had driven that dagger home, you would have inherited my curse," he finished quietly, meeting her eyes. "Fire in your veins until it devours you or breaks the world." She gripped the table's edge. "Why keep that from me before?" "Would it have stopped you?" "It might have." She searched his face. "You allowed me close enough to try again. Did you want it to happen?" A flicker of something, grief maybe, crossed his face. "I wanted a choice. I've been denied those for centuries. I hoped, foolishly, you might see a path other than death." Elora studied him, broad shoulders bent slightly as if weighed down, hands clasped as though steadying himself against invisible tremors. "What did your betrayer do?" she asked gently. He closed his eyes, lashes resting dark against his cheeks. "She feared dragons, feared me. But she loved power more than she feared monsters. She offered my name to an elder curse smith in exchange for dominion over her father's enemies. The curse was the craftsman's price. Bind the dragon to a mortal form, weaken him, and the wars would end." "And did they?" "For a time." He opened his eyes. "Until those enemies sensed weakness and returned. Her kingdom burned all the same." He exhaled. "She died praying for my forgiveness." Elora's pulse thudded with reluctant sympathy. "Did you forgive her?" "I spit fire over her tomb," he said softly. "Time tempered that rage. But forgiveness—" He shrugged. "Some wounds refuse to cauterize." She hesitated, then reached across the table, letting her fingertips brush the back of his hand. His skin was warm, nerves alive beneath. He flinched, but didn't move away. "If you're hoping I'm different," she said quietly, "I don't know if I am. I don't even know myself anymore." He turned his hand palm up, inviting her touch. "Then we learn together."